What is up, folks? It looks like we're live. I think we're simulcasting everywhere. So I'm going to check my LinkedIn really quickly and just make sure LinkedIn's the one that's the most finicky. That we are live and things are working. So give me one sec. While I'm verifying that we're actually live, if you have some questions, this is a great opportunity for you to ensure that you get questions answered. I'm not seeing anything in my profile that says that we're live, so maybe LinkedIn doesn't know we're live. Come on, LinkedIn, where you at? Help me out. Can anybody confirm that we're live on LinkedIn? That would help. I don't know if it takes a little while for the algorithm to figure out that we're good to go. There's my boy Wes. All right, Wes picked me up. All right, so we're good. So the way this works is I will answer whatever questions that are appropriate that folks will place in either. So this is amazing now. So we are live streaming on Twitch, on Periscope. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, but we're going. Periscope, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I feel like that's all of the places. So if I'm missing one, just send me a message, let me know so I can add that to the simulcast. But the goal really is to spend a little bit of time each week trying to answer as many questions as I can that are helpful to folks that are looking for a software engineering role. I focus mainly on software engineering because that's my domain. That's my area of expertise. I could try and answer questions about other ones, but not probably as effective as what I can tell people about software engineering roles. So if you are an early career developer or you know someone that's looking to break into and get their first tech role, this is an awesome opportunity to get any questions they have answered. So the whole gist of this is you throw a question in the box. I read the question and try and answer it. Who I am is Mike Roberts. I'm the founder of San Diego Code School. We run a registered apprenticeship program in the state of California that basically provides an opportunity for folks to learn how to become software engineers and get a year of paid experience. There is no cost to the program. So we run this entirely based on projects that we work on for big size organizations, large companies. So that's the catch. People often ask me, what is it? Is this today? Someone asked me the standard boot camp questions. First question is this a full-time or part-time program? And I'm like, it's a full-time job. Then the next question they asked is, okay, what does it cost? I'm like, there's no cost. It's a job. We pay you. The next question is, what's the catch? And I'm like, there was no catch. Now, we can't hire everybody because that would be like impossible to do financially, but we can hire lots of apprentices. We currently have 9 apprentices that are both learning software engineering and they are getting meaningful experience working for some pretty big size organizations, folks that you may have heard of, like Beckham Dickinson, that's BD.com. Or you may have worked with a company that uses the Salesforce platform or ServiceNow platform. We do ServiceNow integrations, implementations, and service portals, things like that. So shout out to New Rocket. We help New Rocket out with some of their internal tooling and help them produce products and projects for some of their clients. So that's a little bit about me. I've hired lots of software engineers in the past. I also happen to know how to write some code. Been writing code since I was like 12, so that's 32 years. So I have a pretty good sense of what it takes to be successful. And again, pretty good sized sample of students that I've helped in the past get into some pretty well-known organizations. So we set aside this time now every Tuesday at 12 o'clock noon Pacific to talk about maybe some best practices, some things that I've seen over the course of the week, and then answer questions. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them into the little comment box, and I will go ahead and see if I can put me to the test, see if I can answer some of those questions and give you a hand. You can also email me. So you can email me mike@sdcs.io, and I'll check my email periodically just to make sure we don't miss any that someone might have sent. I have a couple that have been sent to me already, so I'll cover those. But I usually like to take a couple minutes at the top and really talk about a few things that I've seen or experienced over the course of the past week that I think could be helpful to folks that are looking for work. So the first one is You want an opportunity to network. And right now, one of the best ways to network is to try and reach out to your local meetup communities and see if you could give a talk. A lot of them have lightning talks as part of their format, where you give a short talk, about 5 minutes or so. Could be on something new that you've learned in the last few weeks. And it's not a super high bar. It's a great place for, if you've never given a technical talk before, to sort of take that first leap and ask, hey, of yourself, hey, what could I add of value to the community and deliver it in just a 5-minute short, maybe a few slides presentation. Gives you the opportunity to be the expert in the room. And you never know. Sometimes there are senior software engineers that might afterwards want to network with you and may be able to turn you into some opportunities that they have inside of the organization. So it's a great way to be the expert in the room and get some networking under your belt. The second thing I would recommend, and hey, Stephanie, I see you there. So I'm going to get to your questions. Thanks for joining. Join some hackathons. So a lot of hackathons are happening virtually now. So that gives you sort of no excuse in terms of getting out there and physically having to worry about, staying overnight somewhere and all that good stuff. In this case, you can join hackathons virtually. Gives you a great opportunity to get some experience and exposure to working with other people, working under sort of interesting and austere conditions, and just gives you some practice, some more reps. And then finally, the last thing that I think more people should be leveraging right now, that would be super helpful if you're entering the space and you don't have a lot of experience, is you should try and attend some of these conferences. A lot of conferences, because of big cancellations, are now trying to create alternative spaces and some virtual conferences to give people a similar experience and not fall off the radar completely. So I know I was going to speak at South by Southwest this past year. So super bummed, because it was my first, not only my first trip to South by Southwest, but the first time I was going to be a speaker at South by Southwest. And when it got canceled, I was super bummed. But they're going to do a virtual online, and I think it's going to be free. So take advantage of these free virtual conferences. They're great networking opportunities and great opportunities for you to level up your skill without there being any kind of cost that is typically associated with it, because South by Southwest is pricey. So I was like, man, I'm going to get this pass. I'm going to be able to spend the whole day inside the conference and not have to pay for it. South by Southwest was shut down, which I think was a good thing, because it would have been like a super spreader event. It would have been terrible from a Corona perspective. So we didn't know that at the time. At the time, I'm like, should I go even if Corona is a raging thing? Right? When none of us really knew what the real impact was going to be at that time. So I was and still am bummed. But take advantage of that. It's a great opportunity this year. Join lots and lots of conferences, and then you'll know next year where you might want to ask for someone to send you as part of perk of working somewhere. So let's jump in and answer some questions. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat box, and I'll do my best to try and answer them. So first up, we have a question, and that is, what skills or characteristics make someone an effective remote worker? Okay, cool. So very, very relevant to what we're doing right now. So I think one of the biggest skills that it's not so much a skill as it is sort of the way you're going to get yourself some latitude to be able to take advantage of this opportunity, maybe not just now, but in the future, is to really be able to work autonomously and understand when it's time to get some help and reach out and be able to effectively get yourself unstuck. I think if you can balance both of those, working autonomously and then getting unstuck as a remote worker, it's a little bit different than what it might be when you're in the office working side by side. When you're working next to someone that's maybe a little bit more senior to you, or even if it's a peer, when you're in the mode where you're not super heads down, so you have your headphones off, which is sort of the visual indicator to folks that it's okay to approach, it's okay to ask questions. Headphones off means I'm not focused and heads down in like an open office space. So you're open, right? And you see somebody else that has their headphones off, then usually it's pretty easy to have some light banter and just be like, hey, can you put a second set of eyes on this? I have a question about X, Y, and Z, and get help real time, really fast. You can just look around and see who doesn't have a headset on right now. Let me go see if I can tap them on the shoulder and see if I can get some help. When you're online, you have to figure out, when you're remote, how do you know who's available and where they're at so that you're not interrupting people, all the time, and so that you're not sort of delaying it because you get some anxiety about interrupting folks. So I would actually manage up, and if your team is not already using everyone with their cameras on so everybody can see when there's an empty seat and someone's gone, or where they can see people's headphones on, then that might be something you want to bring up to your team. Like those are the kinds of things that make you a more effective remote worker, not just sort of dealing with your environment, but also sometimes having a positive impact on your environment so that you can be more productive. So I'd say those are characteristics that would, if I were a manager and I was leading a team of remote workers, I'd want to see all of my workers saying that. I want to see everybody that was a software engineer saying, hey, how do we better communicate? How do we better indicate when we are open for questions or when we're heads down staying focused and shouldn't be disturbed? Because if you interrupt somebody when they're trying to stay focused, it can take a serious plummet to their productivity, right? Because it takes a little while to get back into the focus mode. So hopefully that helps. Next question. What strengths do you think are most important in a developer? Okay, so I think when we talk about strengths, I think more of like attributes, maybe in a non-technical sense that I think are most helpful first, and then maybe some technical ones. So from a non-technical standpoint, I just think grit is probably the most important like attribute a developer should have, right? If you don't have grit, you're going to struggle. You're going to really, really struggle. So you want to have the ability to jump in and be resilient, be diligent, but grit is a big factor. Probably one of the biggest strengths as a software engineer. And then folks will have a different superpower, right? So, one person's superpower might be, getting in and really understanding, APIs and being able to construct APIs and consume APIs. Like that's their thing. That's their jam. And other folks, it may be, hey, Smita, Wes, what's up? See you there. For other folks, it may be sort of the strength or skill set they might have is that they can learn and adapt quickly. So for each person, you're going to have different attributes that help contribute to a team. And so I think the skill or the other strength that's most helpful is, beyond having grit, is knowing what your superpower is and how do you make your team better by leveraging your superpower, and like the whole of your team is now better because you're able to bring something unique to the table. That's your skill. That's your specialty. Like, how do I sprinkle something in that makes everybody else more productive and more helpful? How do I help other people? You could point to specific skills and you could say, you should be able to learn quickly, right? That's always helpful because you're going to be learning and evolving a lot in software. But I think it's even more powerful to be able to know what your skill set is and be able to then help insert it and like make the team better. So certainly doesn't help to be good at computational thinking. So that's the idea. Like, a couple principles are like destructuring, being able to take big problems and break them into smaller problems. That's helpful as a software engineer. So that's, again, part of that sphere of computational thinking. Being able to not only do that, but also be able to have the skill of pattern recognition, being able to see which one of these things doesn't fit, or what is the pattern and how do I apply this pattern to the problem I'm trying to solve? Is it the right pattern to apply? Those, again, fundamental computational thinking skills will always be relevant and helpful when you're a software developer. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions? Again, please drop them in the comments. Love to have these questions and just kind of give you my thoughts. And again, these are just mine. I'm sure as you talk to other folks in the software engineering sphere, you will have varying opinions. Software engineers, especially ones that have been around for a while, all have very strong opinions about things. And so not shy about telling you whether or not you should or should not use semicolons with JavaScript, for example. That is, I think, at least in my book, that's a done deal. It is with semicolons, not without. Right. So I gave a long talk about that once. So suffice to say, you're wrong if you say without. So you might find other individuals that would argue the other case, but it's a little less subjective than tabs versus spaces. So, all right. Another question is, this is a good one. What companies are hiring right now? I guess at a macro level, are a lot of companies hiring? Sure. There are almost always unfilled roles that organizations have. And so part of it is like the design of their job recs. So when they ask for unicorns, or sometimes they're called purple squirrels. So they're asking for someone that has like 3 years of experience with Java, 1 year of experience with, and then name and insert 4 other completely random technologies. those jobs are going to stay around for a while, at least those job openings. And it's going to be hard for them to fill them because it's just unique. And if they have those types of things in their ask, those job openings are going to stay available. Companies that are hiring right now, some of them are just lucky. They're in a time and space in our economy where it makes sense for them to be staffing up. Many are pulling back. And so many companies' response to the uncertainty economically is for them to scale back and hold on to cash and not have big payrolls. And so just be aware of the fact that that's a temporary condition in the marketplace that's caused by a lot of this healthcare issue. Once that's resolved, the fundamentals of the rest of the economy are strong and they will bounce back. I expect to see a huge bounce back in 2021. So I think this is a great time for people that are early on, looking for opportunities and can maybe afford to just harden your skills a little bit more and sort of wait out the jobs and find really good opportunities. So there are some entry-level roles. I see people getting entry-level jobs all the time. It's definitely still possible. It's just going to require you doubling down on the efforts that I talk about a lot on these Tuesday chats, right? So on these Tuesday sessions, I literally give you what I've seen happen dozens and dozens of times. And I also share with you the hundreds of times I see folks flail and fail because they just don't recognize that if they do something differently, it will speed up the process. I'm not teaching folks by answering these questions anything other than here's what I've seen happen and work in the past. And here's what I've seen not work for folks. And oftentimes the intuitive things are the things that add very little value and don't make the process go much faster. So I would suggest that you continue to use these fundamental strategies and approaches to your job search and to the interview process, and you'll be successful. I wouldn't worry about the sheer number of opportunities that are available because there are still tons of opportunities available. And if you want to be a little bit more picky, then you could wait a little while. And then in 2021, it's going to be bananas. Everyone's going to be hiring. So someone posted a question. I'm entering as a non-technical in diversity, equity, inclusion. How do these efforts differ in the tech industry? So I think what you are referring to is how could the efforts that I'm talking about, like job search and interviewing, help? And I think one of the keys is the approach to the job search. So trying to not just do the simple going on to the job boards and just clicking the one-click apply, but instead taking the same strategy and approach of digging a little bit deeper, going to the company website, identifying and not applying to more than about 10 jobs a week would be a super good strategy that will work, I think, across many industries. So taking the time to do more research and put out more quality applications than the quantity of applications would be, I think, a strategy that's going to be the same. A strategy that might be different or might be like not the same outside of tech as inside of tech is, in tech, it's much more about what you can do and your capacity to show someone and tell a narrative that you're the right fit for this role based on your experience and literally demonstrating in front of them during an interview, this is the skill set you bring to the table. In other areas, you may be able to rely on certificates, other types of like signals in the space, like successful initiatives, other kinds of credentials that you bring to the table that demonstrate that that's what they're looking for, right? So they might say, well, to get into diversity and inclusion, we want to see that you're like SHRM certified, like, and then that's like entry level. You got to have that before we can have a conversation. It could be something else. So it'll be very specific, I think, outside of the industry, but there are some things that you're gonna leverage. I think it's also super helpful for folks inside of the industry to know that you can practice software engineering, that craft, on your own. And you do not have to have work experience where you went into a company and you worked for them X amount of time. That's not the same in many other spaces, right? So for a software engineer, you can build passion projects, and on your own, you can hone your skill and have something you can demonstrate to other people. It may be much harder to break into other spaces if you need to have requisite experience and then you don't have the experience, so it's hard for you to show that you're ready for the opportunity, right? So you may be able to find opportunities like volunteer and other things, but it's not nearly as easy as it is for software engineers. So those of you that are complaining and saying, oh, I can't get a job because I don't have experience, and I can't get experience because I don't have a job, that's a fallacy. That is a false narrative. That is what we call fake news. So don't fall into that trap. You have the capacity to build up experience, work on passion projects, contribute to open source, right? There's plenty of opportunity for you to put your hands on the keyboard and create opportunity for yourself. So great question. Another question that came through: what question should I ask at an interview? Okay, so lots of people will say that this is a tip for the interview, that at the end of the interview, when they ask you, do you have any questions, you should ask X, Y, and Z questions. I really only have one or two that I'm most interested in, and I think they apply for even junior engineers. I like to know, and again, this isn't, this may follow the formula, this may not follow the formula, I don't know. This isn't universal. This is my secret. My secret is, I like to ask, depends on who's in the room, right? But if it's not the VP of engineering, CTO, if you're in like the early stages, I like to ask the engineers especially, what do you like about working here, or do you like working here? Some variation of that question, right? Because you can read their eye and their body language, and sometimes they might lean across the table like, yo, you don't want to work here. That's your signal right there. That's the best news ever. It's like, okay, great. Even if I got an offer, this engineer's not happy, so like this is not the right place for me. That's rare, but man, if you're in the room and someone leans across the table and says, run away. Right? Listen to that. So, but you will sometimes get these like you'll get these cues. You'll pick up that they won't overtly say it, but they'll kind of give you the indication that like, listen, this is kind of like a dead end opportunity. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do a lot of this X, Y, and Z. You're going to stay in your place, stay quiet, and you're going to earn a paycheck. And that might be a sign. If you ask someone, do you like working here? And they give you like all these like not great responses, then you've now started to sort of like interview them, and I would move on. So ask questions. It is an opportunity for you to kind of figure out if this is a good fit for you. Ask questions that will give you some of that insight that you can only get from the people that you're talking to, right? So you could also ask them, what types of projects do you anticipate that I would be working on? Because that will help you to see where do they envision you fitting in, and you may start getting sort of some flowery treatment, and you'll get them sort of starting to sell you on, we think you'd be excited to work on X, Y, and Z, and I could envision you working on this team, and you will then start to kind of pick up on some of the cues that, hey, they may be serious about making an offer for you. And so now it's really an opportunity for you to kind of close in and do that one final, these are the things that I bring to the table. I definitely could appreciate that in the first 30, 60, 90 days, I can make a big impact because I'm going to come in here and I'm going to outwork everybody else. I'm going to come in and I'm going to learn this technology because I'm super excited about learning new things and exploring X, Y, and Z. So as an early career developer, they could give you that doorway for you to now maybe tout a few more of your skills, talk a little bit more about what you're going to bring to the table, how you're going to contribute to the team. And you can talk about your superpower, right? That's a great opener. So you lead with a question that might give you an opportunity to interject one or two more skills that maybe have not come up in the dialogue, or you want to kind of close at that part of the interview. So it should be a very strategic set of questions that you're asking. Again, don't just go to the internet and Google, what questions do I ask in an interview? Have a plan for that part of the conversation so that you can sort of engineer a solution, right? You want to engineer an outcome. In this case, it is you want an offer. So, and then be prepared that the offer is not going to come after you have the conversation. You should not expect them to be like, okay, wait right here, and then they're going to come back in and present you with an offer letter. That's not likely to happen. It's possible. It's just not probable. So, question, any recommendation for developers wanting to do some freelance work? Don't. That's my best suggestion. Don't. Now, the reason why I say freelance work is probably not a great fit for early career developers is because you don't, as an early career developer, you don't often have a good enough capacity to know if something is going to be a lot of work or not that much work. And freelancing is really tough. The first few gigs that you usually get, they're not usually very lucrative. You don't usually make a ton of money when you start freelancing. You have to do a few deals that are just like, I just need to get some experience. I need to get my profile with a couple stars on whatever platform you're using. I need to get, a couple wins under my belt so that I can figure out how do I sell, the next project, and how do I get a testimonial. So as long as you're willing to do that long and slow work, you can find meaningful, paths to make some income as a freelancer. But I think a lot of early career developers think that it's easier and it's a less difficult path than searching for a job. And that is not the case. I would tell anybody that's thinking about freelance work that it is going to be significantly harder than just finding a job. Way harder, because you have to wear both hats. You have to actually do the software engineering, but you also have to go out and find projects and negotiate deals and close and make sales. You have to be a salesperson. And if you feel like you can't sell yourself in an interview, it's going to be really hard for you to sell projects to people. And it's difficult. And the way you'll know if you're doing well is you'll do the impossible, which is you will sell really expensive fixed priced contracts. And you'll tell someone, yeah, I'll build you that site. It's going to cost you 10 grand. And when they say, yep, let's do it. And then you build it in a weekend and you walk away with like $9,500 in cash, and I only have to put in actually like $500 worth of work. Now your value is up high enough where you could actually do really well as freelancers. So like graphic designers can do this, right? You're paying not for the number of hours the person puts in, but you're paying for the value of something you deliver. And that's really hard to do as a junior engineer. So if you break down how much effort you make to finish a project and get a project done for a client, and you divide how much that they paid you for when you get fixed price bids, you probably start realizing you're making only like $4 an hour, $10 an hour. And if you're lucky, maybe you're making like $15 an hour, if you're lucky and you're walking on water. So I would be really, really cautious about wanting to do freelance work, thinking that it's a better path than just going out, doing passion projects, building a solid portfolio, and getting a full-time job. Now, can you use freelance work as a way to get compensated for building out your portfolio? Sure. It is that, and as long as that's your goal, great. Just don't take your foot off the gas. Don't think because I'm taking freelance projects and I'm using it to hone my skill and build out my professional portfolio, and I'm getting paid to do it, that you can kind of take your foot off the gas and not be actively looking for a job, because that activity is what's going to lead you to a job, not building a stellar portfolio. It's just one of the pieces you're going to need to actually land it. And you don't want to be in a point where it's like your money is going down, you're trying to freelance, and you don't have your eye on the prize, which is like, this is a temporary solution for the long-term goal of getting your foot in the door inside of a shop. So I'm very, very cautious that developers wanted to do freelance work. And that's my rationale behind it, because I've done it and it's really hard. So question, most popular technologies or languages to know. So my favorite is always JavaScript, and it's because you can do so much as a web developer with JavaScript. You can use it on the server side, you can use it on the client side. It can be used in a functional programming. You can use it in a paradigm where you code object oriented. So there's just lots of flexibility in the language, and there are just enough places for you to use your foot gun to teach you to be careful. And you can then, after you've learned it and mastered a skill set that you could apply in a lot of places, you can then leverage it to learn your second language and third languages. And that just becomes, what are your goals? If your goal is employability, I'd say the most popular and best languages for you to know right now are going to be the ones that are specific to your marketplace that employers are using. So in the San Diego marketplace, that means you'll want to know JavaScript and SQL. And then tied for third place is going to be C# or Java. Now, Python is really popular, but Python is popular if you're looking for like a data engineering role or data science role, or in some cases, shops are using Python for other things, like for DevOps work and automation and infrastructure. But I would say if I had to pick one to learn first, I would say learn JavaScript first, then pivot into whatever area you think is going to give you the most likelihood to find relevant jobs in your community. Now, you can always also go the other direction. You could say, I want to do something that's interesting that not that many people are doing, and I know there's still a demand and you can find unique job opportunities. And if that's the case, learn COBOL. It's super old, but lots of baby boomers are aging out, and we need people that can work on old mainframe computers and can program COBOL. So I know that's a weird like spectrum, right? What's the most popular? And then what could you potentially learn that is somewhat popular? Because there's a lot of people that still use systems that are run by COBOL, but it's a different reason. The rationale is you want to get into a job where you're going to be the person for quite some time if you learn COBOL today. So hopefully that helps with the popular technologies or languages. I would say JavaScript for sure. 30, 60, 90 days, a doorway to tout your skills. Superpower. Okay, it's just a nice. Okay, Christina, love it. I love you amplifying that message of talking about the superpower. Where can we stay up to date with seminars? Okay, so I have a hard time tracking this too, and I haven't found a really great place. A lot of the folks that run conferences use things like Eventbrite and Meetup. So those kind of become aggregators. And I think that's one place you can go, is you can just kind of look and see by doing a search by topic, what's happening on Eventbrite, what's happening on Meetup. But you can also, if you go into some of the Meetup groups, so if you go into the San Diego JavaScript community and you're like, hey, what are some conferences people have gone to before? I would say people will tell you like, oh, every year JSConf, huge. And then go look and see, are we doing a JSConf this year? And is the conference going to be virtual? Is it going to be rescheduled for next year, et cetera? So that's where I would start. If I right now had to go to Google, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to Google for Eventbrite, and then I'm going to Google like maybe even like just top tech conferences. TechCrunch every year is another big one. Like I mentioned, JFConf. There are some marketing ones that every year, like all the marketers. So it's also specific to the space that you want to get into. So if you had a specific type of ed tech, marketing tech, fintech, they all have their own series of conferences. Most, if not all of them, happen in the spring. So spring is like the conference season. And then it sort of dies down over the course of the year. And a fewer of them have conferences towards the tail end of the year. So, hey, Eugene, thank you for coming in and commenting on the Ask Me Anything. Feel free to drop a question in there if you've got any. Appreciate you joining. What type of projects do I think is the most important to have in a portfolio? Good question. So the question I would have for that individual is, what's your goal? You should have the types of projects in your portfolio that showcase the skills that will align with the type of job that you're looking for. So if you said, my goal is I want a front-end engineering role, and I really want to focus on, UX and UI that's like amazing, where I just create magic and customers just love interacting with my websites. Let me like, all right, you want to go super deep and show lots of projects on your portfolio that show your ability to work with languages and frameworks on the front end. You don't need a lot of back end stuff. You just want to you're going to want to have lots of like pictures, and people can either go into your projects and they can see a portfolio page with screenshots and you walking through why you did this user interface, or some other visual medium. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking for a back end role and you want to work, you want to be able to demonstrate microservices architecture, and you want to be able to demonstrate clean code. So now you're more focused on describing technically and maybe even showing what your planning process was, what you built, and here's a page where you can go look at the code. See how that's going to be like different? And so when you pick projects and you put them onto your portfolio, you're going to want to skew them in the direction of what's the skill set that you want to most sort of showcase. Think about it like this is your opportunity. You got 2 or 3 projects to show that are going to hopefully align with the type of role that you want. And I think it's amazing when someone says, I've been working on, let's say, WordPress, PHP projects forever, and I'm so sick and tired of it, and I don't want a job in PHP. And then on their portfolio, they put like the 4 WordPress projects that are the most recent projects they worked on. Like, why do you have this on your portfolio? All you're going to get is people reaching out to you, asking you to do themes and plugins for WordPress. If you don't want to do that, get this off your portfolio. And then they're like, but what do I put on my portfolio then? Anything except for what you don't want to do. So that's my advice there. Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate it. Can I talk about project management and capacity planning skills for developers? I think that would be a great PSA for junior devs. Sure. And so I think the most important thing I'll say about passion projects, and my take is different than some folks, and it's controversial, but I am a huge advocate for passion projects, and the scope of the work that you take on as a junior engineering and planning should be real short, because there are going to be so many distractions, so many other things you're going to work on, and you want to be able to showcase projects where you do maybe a smaller project, but everything's super nice and super tight and dialed in, versus you took on a big project and there's all these gaps and there's always areas where there's a little bug here and there's a little defect there, like the screens aren't flushed out. And then you're walking people through, like, in the future, what I'd like to do is X, Y, and Z, rather than having a conversation about why you made X, Y, and Z choices and really showcase that. So I'd say narrow scope. You want projects in your passion project portfolio to be 3-4 days max. Anything that's going to take you 4 months, that's not the kind of work you want to do now for your portfolio. If you want to do that as your hobby project, that's like a side thing that you're going to do for the next few years, great. But when junior developers may make the mistake of coding their own profile and like creating a tool to like demonstrate all their work, that's a waste of time. Just put up a WordPress website or a static site that has links to your projects. Like, don't invest a lot of time in the portfolio site itself. That's a time sink for most people. The other thing is like blogs. Everybody's like, I'll build a blog. It's like, no, I wouldn't do that either. Focus on writing content, not on building the blog. These are common traps that junior developers will make all the time. So my suggestion is don't fall into it. Listen to the senior devs that tell you, like, these are not what we want to see. I want to see you're doing 2-3 projects a week. And I'm seeing, oh, you got a login here, so you're definitely covering authentication. You understand how that works, and you're doing it on the back end, which is awesome. So I love seeing how you're serving up server pages. So that's great. Like, it's not something you might use everywhere, but hey, I understand that you understand the value of server side, server rendered content. And then you have another project where you're consuming and you're using an API. So that's great. I can see, you're able to, use an API and make calls. Awesome. I want to see a variety of skill sets, not one behemoth project that has all these different things that are somewhat working, but kind of not all tied together. And so it's much, much easier for folks to just dial back, appreciate. You don't need a big scope, big, huge project to make an impact on someone. You just need to show, like, what's the value of this? Is it cool? Is it fun? Does it solve a problem for somebody? If so, awesome. Doesn't have to, you don't have to try and beat Slack. Like, I'm going to build a chat box. It's like, nah, probably should just use Slack. That's right. But maybe you could build a Slack bot that would do something interesting or something novel. That would, again, be a 3 or 4 day project. Think of them as little mini hackathons. Don't think of them as ongoing work that will take you several months, because we all know you're going to get distracted and it's not going to be your best work. So that's my take on scoping for projects. What about I see comments. I'm not tracking that conversation, so it's kind of just interesting. It's like, I have no reference what that means, but I like it. Random LinkedIn user says, all ears. Great. Appreciate that. Thanks, Eugene. Appreciate the question. So questions are slowing down. So for those of you just joining, this is every week we do an Ask Me Anything session, and I focus on helping early career developers get all the rando questions that you have answered, so that you can move on to the more important things of, like, finding and connecting with folks, and then making the right steps during the interview to convince someone you're the exact fit for the role that they have. Shout out to Elizabeth Cotton, who is running a great, fantastic conference, Career Mingle. So you can you can go to their website and check out what they're doing. Again, great conference opportunity, careermingle.tech. I'll be on a panel talking, I think, about something like this, career tips. So Have I noticed more companies using CCAT, SAT logic tests to weed out applicants for engineering support positions? I've had 2 companies give me these tests requiring high scores before I ever made it to the technical interview. That's terrible. I don't like that idea at all. So I don't know that a logic test is going to be a great way to separate out candidates, but I get where they're going with it. So I've had companies say, well, some of the requirements we put on there, because if we don't put those requirements on there, we get lots of resumes. And I'm just like, that's dumb. Like, just because you get lots of resumes doesn't mean you should create a simple weeding technique to reduce the number of resumes you have to actually look at. I think you should come up with a better criteria, and it should be focused on what are the skills necessary to do the job that you're hiring for, and how do you best assess a candidate for those skills. So I'm sorry you had to make it through that. I'm not hearing a lot of that out in the space. I'm not hearing employers tell me that they're starting to use any of these kinds of I would call that like an aptitude test, like any kind of aptitude test as a screening mechanism early on. I think it's dumb, and I don't think it's going to lead to great hires. So I would hope that a lot of employers do not use that to quote unquote weed out candidates, because I don't think it's going to help them select the best candidates for the job. But that's just one man's opinion. Henry Frank, that is a refrigerator almost completely chock full of LaCroix. So you too, if you're wanting to be a software engineer, may at some time get the opportunity to have limitless LaCroix at your fingertips. So that's one of those perks. Talk about that a lot on my podcast, the Snack Walls podcast, that you might get a snack wall, you might get limitless LaCroix, but you really want to make sure that you're getting to work for an employer that's going to give you the opportunity to get developed and to grow, and having an opportunity to just do a lot of things and figure out better what your superpower is, and just enjoy a range of opportunities. So check out the Snack Walls podcast. Plug for Snack Walls. Every day I release episodes of the Snack Wall podcast, and we talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity in tech, and how companies can get better at identifying candidates and retaining those candidates once they're on the job. So big shout out to all the guests that have come on so far, and those that I will hopefully talk to in the future. Love to amplify your message about how you do that effectively. So question just came through. What are my thoughts on developers interested in full stack? I think it's good. I think there's a thought out there in the world that being a generalist is a bad thing, but I think a lot of the work that needs to be done generalists can handle. And then when you need a specialist, someone that just really refined in their skill set, is entirely focused on things like the front end and entirely focused on the back end, then you can bring those resources to bear on the problems that you have. I love like mob programming, where you have all the right people sitting at the table to complete the work. Not a lot of organizations apply that philosophy, but it's kind of like distilled into the embodiment of like matching the talent you have in your organization to the problem you're trying to solve, right? So not every organization is going to look at mob programming and think it makes sense or be willing to try it, but I think it epitomizes the idea of like full stack, having all the skills necessary to build something. Even if you spend more of your time working primarily in the front end or more of your time working primarily in the back end, it's good to know what are your counterparts working on and how does your work need to marry up and integrate with other people's work. So I think the philosophy of developers wanting to really take accountability for the full stack, for understanding what's happening on the front end, what's happening on the back end, is a good thing. And then they will probably identify that it's really hard to hold all that together at a high level of skill, and you will have to sharpen your saw and focus on like some part of that full stack for you to really be able to work independently and not need to pull in a heavy gun when you get kind of to the point where you can't keep up with it all. It's hard to do. There are also software engineers that will make the argument that every software engineering role is full stack. And philosophically, I understand where they're going with that. They're basically saying, well, you always have to understand how something is happening all the way down at the bare metal and all the way up where the user interacts with your page. And if you don't understand how all that works, that's how software works. You're not a software developer. You're not a software engineer. I'm not there yet. I'm not philosophically aligned with that philosophy. I think what people are saying when they say I want a full stack position is they want to not be told you can only work on the front end and like other people are gonna like you'll be waiting on them to finish the back end. And instead they're like, but I want to be able to like know what's going on there and be able to build that piece too. So I think that's what people are going with when they say I want full stack or I want to be a full stack developer, which is kind of the way it was back in the day. Back in the day, you were a webmaster. That meant you were responsible for anything that even resembled being technology. It's like the printer's broken. Sorry, boss. I'm not a desktop support technician. I'm a software engineer. If the website is broken, I can fix that. But yeah, that's my take on full stack. Ooh. Questions are slowing down. That must mean everybody is getting tired from eating lunch. So how's this? Give me some feedback. How is this time working for folks? Is this time better for folks? Not good for folks? We moved it from 7 a.m. and my thought process was people that are looking for jobs are probably not up at 7 a.m., although they should be, and looking for jobs. And instead, I think it's more reasonable to say it's a grind and I get it. And maybe by having it in sort of the middle of the day, we will be able to reach more folks that need help. And doing it at 7 a.m. is probably not nearly as effective for, I think, the folks that need to have access to just ask these questions. So that's my hypothesis, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, or you can send me an email, mike@sdcs.io, and make a suggestion. If you think this time is dumb, then I'm willing and I'm open to doing it at a different time. I'm just genuinely curious as to when is the best time for folks to get this live, because I feel like watching the replays is not nearly as entertaining and useful as people being able to like riff off of a question that somebody else asked and go a little bit deeper if they need to, etc. So let me know. So Adrian says 12 o'clock is preferred. Lunch is preferred. I know for some of the folks on the West Coast, because you might be able to just like, if you're in one of those terrible jobs and you're just like, I got to get out of this job and I really want to become a software engineer. Perfect. During lunch, you can just get all fired up and I'll get you all jazzed and excited. And then after work, you can get in there and do the coding and get on the interwebs and take some exercises, and then eventually break free of that terrible situation that you're in. So love that. That's a win. And I truly do believe that you do not need to invest a ton of money to go to a boot camp. It's a path. I'm not saying it's the only path. There are lots of self-taught developers. There are lots of folks that go and get a 4-year CS degree or 2-year associate's degree or take some classes online. Lots of different ways to get there. It's really going to just like determine like what the journey feels like. Like the journey will feel different if you go to an immersive coding boot camp than the journey might feel if you go through an apprenticeship, than how it might feel if you go and get a CS degree. The journeys are going to be different, but I think the end result is likely to be just about the same. You're going to get the opportunity to work in the field, and then from there sort of guide the next few phases of your career. And they'll very much be dictated by your effort. What effort do you put forward will determine how quickly you advance in your career. So I like this. The work, this was a good time for me. Work is later in the day, so I appreciate shifting the time. All right. I like it. I'm still up early. So if anybody says, no, I like the earlier time, I'm usually up and at my desk no later than 5:30. But I'm usually try and be up at 5 so that I can just get an early start and beat everybody that starts to like ping me at like 8 or 9 in the morning with all kinds of requests and all kinds of stuff I got to do. So I can get a lot of stuff done. And so I would recommend, if you're looking for work, get up early, get a workout in, and sit down and get your reach outs and your follow-ups done. Get a super productive morning under your belt. That way, after you have lunch and you want to take a little siesta in the afternoon, your work is already done. You're just waiting for the phone call, right? Put me in, coach, by that point. And the other way around is like, waking up around noon, kind of not having focus, and instead sort of letting the day run you. And then you're up until like 2 in the morning working on a passion project. Not healthy. So take care of yourself, get rest, get up early, treat this process like a job, and set a realistic time frame. Start at 5, start at 6, whatever time works for you. And I realize that not everybody is going to be able to, set aside that early of a start because, maybe you have, other family things. But to the extent that a lot of folks don't have those constraints, there should be a level of self-discipline if you really feel like you want to accelerate the process and get a job quickly. If you're okay with the process taking longer, then you don't have to do any of this stuff. Make it easy for you. None of the things I've suggested. But if you want the process to go quickly, you definitely can. You definitely can find opportunities very quickly if you're willing to put the effort in and treat the process like a job. With the discipline and the effort and balance your time. I think I've talked about in the past balancing how much time you spend looking for work, how much time you spend on projects, how much time that you spend learning new things every week. So more than happy to cover that in another session if that's, or you guys can go back and you can check out the previous recording. But super valuable to break up your week and have a strategy for how much time you're investing in the different activities that will lead to the best chance for you to get a job sooner rather than later. I like it. So a lot of people are saying 12 o'clock. So I feel like this fits better than the previous time, 7 a.m. That's right. We're learning what's working. What other questions do you guys have? You are welcome. It's super weird because I don't know if everybody from all the platforms can see all the comments. So it's like, it's random. I'm responding to someone saying thank you. And it's just going to be like on Twitch, I'm just going to be randomly shouting out, thank you. They're going to be like, bro, I didn't see anything. What is he talking about? So the simulcast is going to be a little weird. Just so you know, I am definitely preferring LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is getting the preferential treatment here. Although I have not, if anybody knows how I could ahead of time know what the LinkedIn Live link is going to be, that would be superb. Because I don't know how to do it in advance. I know there's a way you can set up events. So if someone wants to school me on how I can set up an event and know in the future where the link is going to be for LinkedIn Live, but no idea. So, all right, I'm going to do going once. If anybody has questions, please feel free to drop it in email as well. So mike@sdcs.io. I'm going to do one quick check of my email and see what we got. It's always full of random stuff. So mostly spam at this moment. I don't see any questions. So unless I see any come through, I'm going to give you back roughly 7 minutes of your life. And we're going to end here. And then we'll do this again next week. If in the meantime, anybody has any questions or if I can be helpful, be a resource, please feel free to reach out, mike@sdcs.io. If you are interested in our apprenticeship program, again, it doesn't cost anything. We don't charge you anything. You don't owe anything. It is free for you to apply. It really is an opportunity if you make the cut, if you get into the program, to get paid to learn how to code. And it's a living wage. Somebody else is like, oh, so it must be like minimum wage. I'm like, no, to me it's not. No one's getting rich off of doing it, but we pay $18 an hour to start, $19 in 6 months in, and $20 an hour when a apprentice is at the 1 year mark. So I think it's decent. So great opportunity for folks that are looking and have not yet had a chance to go through a coding boot camp, et cetera. It's designed for folks that don't have a lot of experience to be able to come on board, rapidly gain some skill, and then get them into some larger size organizations. So that's our goal. Our goal is to help as many folks that maybe look like me, are traditionally underrepresented in technology, and give them an opportunity to gain those skills through an alternative pathway beyond like a 4-year degree, right? We all know about that pathway. We know about boot camps. Apprenticeship is yet another pathway that I'm hoping will help solve some of the other problems that we have in the space in terms of accessibility and affordability, et cetera. So please check out more information about our program at sdcs.io. Have a great one.